My bike won't go into first gear. Must be broken. Alright, my bike's not broken. I can just release the clutch, pull the clutch back in, and boom, I'm in first gear. As I've been out riding today, I've been thinking about some of the things that I wish I had known when I got my first motorcycle about 3 years ago. So I thought I'd make a video about things that worried me when I first got a motorcycle that turned out to be totally normal. Just to be clear, this video is for people who are fairly new to motorcycle riding in general. The things that I'm going to talk about are probably very well known to anybody who's been riding a motorcycle for any amount of time. Hello, little cow. So if you're a veteran rider, even if you've been riding for, and really any amount of time, most of these things are not going to be new to you. Although there is one at the end that I'm going to talk about that may be a surprise depending on where you ride. Anyway, the first few things that I want to talk about all relate to the clutch/transmission of a motorcycle. If you're new to motorcycles, there's a few little idiosyncrasies that you should be aware of before you call your mechanic or panic that you got a lemon. One of them I demonstrated in the opening of this video is that sometimes you'll be in, for me it's usually when I'm in neutral, at least that's when I notice it most, and I'm sitting there with the clutch in neutral, and I go in first. Of course it works that time, no problem. Most of the time it works, but sometimes it just doesn't go. And that's normal. That's happened on every bike that I've ridden. And granted, I've only ridden, 5 or 6, but regardless of make or model, I've experienced this. And all these things relate to just the physics of what they call a sequential transmission or a sequential gearbox. And what that means, like if you're in a car, if you drive a stick shift, in most cars that aren't race cars, you have a specific position for every gear, first, second, third, fourth. But with a sequential transmission, you can only move one. And if you're in third gear, you can't immediately go to first gear. You can't immediately go to fifth gear. You have to go third, fourth, fifth, or third, 2, 1. So that's, it's all in a sequence. And I don't know the guts of it or why it's quirky, but just be aware that it can be. One of those quirky things is that sometimes, something gets misaligned in that sequential gearbox, and you're in, neutral, and it just doesn't want to go into first. I've also noticed problems getting into first. For instance, if you are cruising along at a good speed in a higher gear, 4th, 5th, 6th, and then rather than gearing down as you slow down, engine braking they call it, you just pull in the clutch while you're in 5th or 6th gear, come all the way to a stop. Sometimes your transmission just doesn't know what to do. In fact, on this bike, if I do that, sometimes the gear indicator just kind of wigs out. It just shows a like a minus sign, because it's like, I don't know what's going on here. So to wake it up, what I always do is you pop the clutch. If you're in gear, like in the scenario that I just talked about, where you were in 6th and you came down, sometimes you're still in gear, and you have to kind of just slowly let the clutch off until it engages just a little bit, and then you can pull it back in, and that usually wakes it back up. So I've heard other people say, they roll their bike forward a little bit to get it back in sync, or roll it back a bit. Those things probably all work fine. For me, especially for the neutral going into first, if it just doesn't want to grab, all I do is pop the clutch out and then back in, and then I can get into first gear every time. But in any case, don't worry about it if you're having that. It's just an idiosyncrasy that you got to get used to. And the next thing that is related to the gearbox slash transmission is shifting down when you're going at a decent speed. So, you know, I see a lot of people who are concerned on forums and Facebook groups and whatnot that say, you know, my bike clunks really hard when I go into usually first gear they're talking about. And it does, especially if you're going too fast. Like, so I'm going 30 miles an hour right now. If I pull it in and go down to first gear, I hope you heard that. It's a pretty loud clunk. And again, that's just related to how fast they, you know, how the gears work. It doesn't want to be in that low of a gear, even though your clutch is in. It just doesn't want to be in that space when you're going too fast. So if you slow down before you downshift, then there's no problem. Good rule of thumb that I use is as I'm downshifting to engine brake. Again, if you're not familiar with the term engine brake, all that means is, you know, rather than I'm going, you know, 30 miles an hour here, I'm going to wait till I get out of this loose gravel before I demonstrate. If I want to slow down, I can either pull on the brake or I can shift down to second, let out the clutch, and then the gears pull me down. As you're doing that, a rule of thumb that I use is to not shift into a gear going down at a faster speed than I would shift out of that same gear going up. So if say you normally shift from second to third at 20 miles an hour, then I wouldn't shift back into second until you're slowed down to 20 miles an hour first. And that's doubly true for first gear. If you normally upshift out of first gear at 10 miles an hour, don't shift down into first gear until you're slowed down to 10 miles an hour. And then you won't notice that clunking nearly as much. I've got to believe that it's better on your bike to avoid it by shifting down at the proper times, but don't think your bike's broken if you're clunking as you drop down into first. And the third thing that I want to talk about related to the clutch and the transmission, and this is really a combination between the transmission and the kickstand, but most bikes nowadays have a safety feature, so this is a feature, not a bug, that doesn't allow the bike to be running if the kickstand is down and the bike is in gear, regardless of whether or not the clutch is in. And this one bit me in the butt early on. My son had just bought his first bike. It was a little mini bike, CT70 clone, and we could not get it to start. And I had no idea about this safety feature until, you know, we were looking at the carburetor. We were, you know, checking for spark, all the things that you do when your bike won't start. And it just kind of by happenstance, I noticed a wire coming off of the kickstand when I was under the bike looking at things, and I thought, why is there a wire going to the quick kickstand? And it occurred to me that, hey, maybe there's some sort of safety feature there. Pop the kickstand up, and boom, it started right up. And depending on the bike, well, at least all the bikes that I know of, they'll start fine with the kickstand down if they are in neutral. So right now, kickstand is down, I'm in neutral, bike's running fine. But with kickstand still down, I drop it into first gear, the bike stops, because that's what it's programmed to do. If I put the kickstand up now, still in first gear, I can start right back up. So just be aware of that. Oh, look at that, 2,500 miles. Woo! Just be aware of that. If your bike won't start, I've seen it happen probably a dozen times in different forums that I'm a part of, where somebody gets on saying, you know, I'm having my bike won't start, what could be the problem? And they describe everything that they've tried, and it's tragically very, you know, in depth. And somebody will say, is your kickstand up? And then they say, oh, that was it. All right, the next thing I want to talk about is the brakes. Couple quick things on the brakes that I I've found, and probably not going to be able to hear this. Yeah, it's not going to come through, but just be aware with disc brakes that sometimes if you're rolling your bike around, you'll hear this very light, just kind of rubbing sound coming from your discs. And the first time that I heard that on my first bike, I was worried that my brakes weren't adjusted right or the discs weren't installed correctly. But just know that that's the nature of disc brakes. If you've ever changed disc brakes on a car, you'll remember that you put in the brake pads and the calipers sit behind them, and all the calipers do is push. There's no mechanism for them to pull the brake pads back away from your disc, and it's the same with the disc brakes on a bike. So the caliper is pushing your brake against your disc, and then when you let go of the brake, it just still sits there. And of course, just the movement of your bike, it kind of frees itself, and it's all fine. But because it can be sitting right next to it, sometimes you'll just hear a light kind of scratchy rubbing sound as maybe you're kind of rolling your bike around your garage or something like that. Don't stress about it. That's normal for disc brakes. Another thing about brakes that is just something that I noticed, having different types of rear brakes. I've had a couple bikes that have drum rear brakes and a couple that have disc rear brakes. And the first bike that I got that had drum rear brakes, I thought the brakes just must be bad or adjusted wrong, because on the drum brakes, they just feel way squishier. They just kind of go way farther down, and they just don't grab as tightly. And I think that's just the nature of drum brakes for whatever reason. All the bikes that I have that have disc brakes in the rear, they just feel a lot more firm and grabbier, where the drum brakes sink in and they kind of just feel squishy. And I didn't know that when I got my first bike that had drum brakes on it, and I thought there was something wrong with the brakes until I got a couple more bikes that had drum brakes, and they're all exactly the same. So that's the things I wish I would have known about brakes. And it's getting a little bit dark, so it's probably a good time to talk about another thing that I wish I would have known. And this is another thing that falls into the realm of it's a feature, not a bug. It's definitely designed this way, but something that you should know about, because, again, it's bitten me in the butt not knowing about it. But just know that if your key is on, if your ignition is on, whether the bike is running or not, your headlight is most likely going to be on. Every bike that I have that has a headlight, that has been the case. And in fact, you can hear my radiator fan is blowing too. And the reason that can bite you in the butt is if you are out riding and you decide to take a break, you hop off, maybe you don't turn the key off, you just hit the kill switch. Now you'll notice the kill switch did turn off my radiator fan, but it does not turn off the headlight. And that would not be a really huge problem at this time of day, because you'd notice that your light's still on. But when you're riding in the middle of the day, you won't notice that your light's on, but it's going to just be sitting here draining your battery. So maybe you sit down, you pull out a chair, have a drink, have some lunch, whatever. You get on 20-30 minutes later, and your bike won't start because you've drained your battery because the light's been on the whole time. And again, that has happened to me before. Luckily, it happened on a bike that was super easy to push start. Just be aware that you can very easily drain your battery by leaving the key in the on position. So ever since that happened to me, I never turn my bike off with the kill switch. I always just turn it off with the key. Then it's never an issue. Okay. Now the last thing that I'm going to talk about that is normal on your bike, and this is one that I think may be new to even a few veterans, depending on where you ride, but I want to talk about it now because it's happening right now. So if you're getting shocked in your hands as you drive, you might be seriously worried like I was that your bike is not grounded, there's something wrong with the electrical, some hot wire touching. Anyway, I don't know, you might be concerned that your electrical is all messed up. But before you go tearing your bike apart and looking at every wire, pay attention to where the shocking happens. And my bet is if you're getting shocked in your fingers, it probably happens when you're driving under a big power line like this. And probably it happens when you're wearing gloves that have these capacitive fingertips that allow you to touch a smartphone or other device. For whatever reason, and maybe this is just me, maybe these are just dangerously exposed power lines, I don't know. But when I ride under things like this with gloves that have capacitive fingertips, and I touch a brake lever or something, it shocks me. So there you go. Maybe that's new, maybe it's not, but just be aware that it is normal, at least in my experience. It's not bike specific, it's location specific, and for me, glove specific. And there you have it. Those are the things, at least the things that I can think of right now, that I wish I would have known not to worry about when I first started riding a motorcycle. I'm sure I've missed some because this has all just been kind of stream of consciousness as I've thought of things. So if you know of other things that are normal that seem abnormal, please let me know. It could save me some stress in the future, and it might save some other people some stress. So share the love. As always, thanks for watching. Subscribe if you feel like it, and ride safe.